I'd like to welcome each of you to Dr. Askelson's presentation here at the Macon campus location. We have had quite a tour for today, and this is our last stop prior to Dr. Askelson finishing up. Whoa, that's loud. Here at Dr. Blake's office. I really appreciate all of you coming out. The weather did not cooperate with us at all today. It started bad and it's been bad all day long. And at our last meeting, telling him I'm about to freeze to death. And you know, you're wet, cold, and all this kind of stuff. So, but it's really good to have Dr. Askelson with us today. He'll be giving you for about 20 to 25 minutes. Then I'll let him know when his time is getting close as I sit somewhere strategically where I can let him know that. And then it will be your time in order to ask him any questions that are near and dear there to your heart at that time. So this time, Dr. Askelson, come. Thank you.
Thank you. Well, and while given the opportunity, I really want to recognize and thank Troy for being such a terrific host on behalf of Middle Georgia State University. He has just been a wonderful ambassador to your institution, and he's put up with me for darn near 24 hours now. So thank you, Troy. Again, my name is Lance Askelson. I'm very happy to be here, and I appreciate you taking time out of your busy schedules to come and hear me talk this afternoon. I'll endeavor to make it worth your while. Before I give you my opinion for the future of Middle Georgia State University, I want to tell you a little bit about myself, and I'm not going to go into any great detail about my professional profile. You've all seen my CV, but just a quick refresher. I'm currently at Kennesaw State University as Vice Provost and Chief International Officer. A very wide and broad and deep, for that matter, portfolio there, and you can explore that in my CV. Prior to the Kennesaw State University, I was at the University of Notre Dame as Assistant Provost of their Center for the Study of Languages and Cultures. I'm an applied linguist by training, and currently I do a lot of interdisciplinary work in my faculty teaching and scholarship. I'm not actually from Lake Wobegon. That's, of course, a tongue-in-cheek reference to Garrison Keillor and a Prairie Home Companion. But I am from Minnesota, and the reason I decided to include that in the slide is I wanted you to have a sense of where I'm coming from. Rochester, Minnesota is about the size of Macon. It's about 100,000 people, and it's in the middle of vast swaths of farmland. So it's a sort of a rural. I got the question a few times today, so why Middle Georgia State? Well, it's very logical to me, I should note, and it wasn't, it was a result of your location that I decided to apply, not a byproduct of it. And so I'm very happy to be here, but before I that vision, let me also tell you a little bit about who I am or who I strive to be. And I want to start telling you that I always conceive of myself as a faculty member and an educator first and foremost. I got into the field I got into the business of academia because I think that teaching is one of the most noble professions there is. And I continue to believe that despite some of the bureaucracy that tries to beat the heart and soul out of me from time to time. And as proof of that commitment, I submit to you, I have not had a teaching load in about 10 years, but I have taught every single year because first and foremost, I enjoy it. I'm energized by it, but it also informs my administrative work. It gives me insight into why I'm there and how to serve my students, serve the institution students, and understand the challenges faced by faculty as I work within the Provost's office to enact new policies and initiatives to support that shared institutional mission. The other thing I want to tell you about myself is that I'm an advocate, certainly within the institution for, again, students, faculty, but increasingly outside of the institution. So as you may have noticed, higher education has become rather politicized in the last few years. Increasingly, we are being questioned by members of our community, and there's really a misunderstanding, a broad misunderstanding about what it is we do within the academy and within institutions of higher learning. And so I see it as a part of my role currently as vice provost, and I certainly would carry this over into your provostship, an advocacy mission out in the community, speaking to local stakeholders, making sure to engage them and educate them about what it is we do and the value added that we bring to those communities. Finally, I like to think of myself as a leader who gets things done. I'm very proud of my ability to roll up my sleeves and wade down into the minutia of an issue when called for. I abhor micromanagement, but at the same time, I also realize that leaders also need to be able to get down into the detail and try to find solutions. And so I have a deserved reputation in all of my roles for doing that. And I also try to do that at all times from a position of integrity. That's very important to me, the idea that we're driving our decision-making from institutional mission and a position of genuine concern for that transformational educational experience that we're here to provide. So that's a little bit about me and some of the things that I hold near and dear. Now let me tell you about this vision. But to get to that, let me give you a caveat. And that is this entire exercise of articulating a vision for an institution that I've been at for less than 24 hours. Yes, I did my due diligence. I did lots of research. I peppered poor Troy with questions beyond end. But there's so much that I don't know. And I would never think to articulate a vision or a strategy without embarking on a systematic consultation of stakeholders. And that certainly includes everyone in this room, a whole lot more. And so this is a bit of an exercise, and I understand the reason we have to go through it, but I don't want you to think that this is a prescribed vision. This isn't necessarily anything that I would do. Not that I don't believe in everything I put on my slides which follow, but rather I don't know enough to make recommendations that are worth following through on at this early stage. All right. The other sort of consideration I want to throw out here is I'm going to recommend things that I think will embellish Middle Georgia State University. I already assume that we're starting from a position of strength, that you have tremendous assets because I know that you do. I've been looking through your materials. I was looking through the MGA magazine not long ago. Faculty, there is amazing work being done at Middle Georgia State. You are the best value in the state of Georgia and probably one of the best values in the country. Some of your programs are bar to none the best there are. You've got distinctive programs and distinctive pedagogies, including your new experiential learning at MGA program that I think are incredibly admirable and worthy of emulation. Institutions much larger and much more well-funded than your current institution is. So again, I am assuming that I am going to be implementing this vision from a position of strength, leveraging your assets. All right. With all that out of the way, let me tell you what my vision is. It is, as you can see there, to make academics matter. Now, as a good applied linguist, I'm using the word academics in both senses. All right. I'm talking about making academics as people matter, that is, you as faculty. I want to make faculty matter in the institution by ensuring that there's good processes for shared decision-making. There's clear and articulated expectations for how to advance and how to contribute to the institutional mission. I'm also talking about academics as the enterprise of the university. And this means that I want to invest in students. I want to invest in RPG. I want to innovate pedagogies and research platforms, including applied research and inquiry, that allows us to advance that educational mission. And so I want to invest not just monetarily, because we all know we don't have that much money, but I want to invest all of our human capital and our energies in these strategic areas that allow us to advance and to grow in very measurable ways as an institution. So to start, I want to invest in faculty. I have 4 of these things. First is investing in faculty. I want to specifically invest in faculty professional development. Professional development isn't simply prescribed training. Professional development is about creating an opportunity for faculty who are really a class of professionals. They need room to be cultivated as creatives. That is, they need the find new things, to experiment, to be exposed to new pedagogical approaches, new ways of pursuing their own intellectual and scholarly inquiry, and the Provost's office, the Division of Academic Affairs, needs to provide a context in which to pursue that. And so my vision is to invest heavily in holistic professional development, a series of not just one initiative, but bottom-up and top-down initiatives to ensure that faculty have opportunities to grow and develop in ways that they feel are important. And that certainly is going to require resources, but it also will require a change in culture from what I understand is the current norm. There's a real articulation of a need for more development and more value of that professional development opportunity. And so I want to make that a strategic priority. I also want to make sure that we are cultivating leaders from within through these professional development opportunities. I don't just mean traditional admin leadership roles. I mean leadership of committees, of initiatives, of outreach activities. I think we, again, need to leverage one of our most valuable assets, and that is the faculty who teach our students, who pursue the intellectual inquiry that advances our institution as an institution of higher learning. And beyond the professional development realm, I want to invest in faculty advancement. Again, faculty are the greatest asset of the institution. We invest a lot institutionally to bring faculty, to push them and support them, I hope, through the tenure process or whatever development they're not tenure track. And I want that to be articulated and clear. I want to improve some of the structure and process that underlines faculty advancement. I want to be proactive and work with deans and department chairs to ensure that we're doing proactive outreach at the beginning when faculty enter the institution, all the way through their end of career period, ensuring that they have opportunities to advance in ways that are obviously relevant to the institutional mission, but also relevant to their own interests and needs. Of course, I also want to specifically advance the tenure and promotion process, strengthen it, clarify it, ensure that we have a process that is open to shared governance procedures. Faculty and other stakeholders in that process, including department chairs, deans, need to understand every step of that process so that they can communicate it clearly to those stakeholders. And so everyone can understand that we have a credible process that they can respect the outcomes of. And I think there's room for development and growth in the institution, but given some of the feedback I've received from faculty thus far today, it sounds like there's room for development there as well. Try again. All right. My second theme is prioritizing student success. So obviously, student success is a benchmark of institutional success overall. I want to prioritize some specific areas of student success. I want to start with where our students enter. With recruitment efforts, I want them to be more deliberate. I want to ensure that the students that we are recruiting are not just the right fit for the institution, but are also tracked into pathways so that they can be successful from that first semester on campus. And to that end, I want to make sure that we have the right orientation programs, the right first-year experience programs. I want to prioritize first-year experience as a strategic imperative to the success of the institution. So we have faced some enrollment declines. Those enrollment declines are also predicated on our retention efforts. Our ability to retain students who come and then persist all the way to some form of degree is absolutely vital to the financial success and sustainability of the institution, and will help buttress some of the enrollment challenges that we've had. So I want to invest in innovative approaches to that first year experience. I've worked with the Gardner Institute. I understand Middle Georgia has also been a pioneer in working with the Gardner Institute for Student Success. I think there are some tremendous human capital approaches to engaging students more deliberately, inspiring them to examine academic pathways earlier. There are some great technologies and other features that we should also be looking at. At Kennesaw State, we've adopted a number of new e-advising platforms. We're using some peer advising mechanisms and programs. Other very effective and emergent technologies that can help us with as well as my next point, which is student retention, progression, and graduation, RPG. This is an important measure for the University System of Georgia. It's increasingly important for institutions to show measurable gains in RPG. And again, I would prioritize this and work hand in hand with departments, colleges, the academic enterprise overall to ensure that we have the proper mechanisms in place to help students who are struggling, to connect them with resources that in many cases are already there, and to ensure that we are cultivating new resources where they're going to have the greatest impact for certain demographics, for certain types of students. Now, I understand all of this is aspirational. I'm not putting in this, I'm not giving you any specifics, and that's because I don't know enough to give you hard data. But what I will tell you is my approach to student success, and indeed my approach to leadership on any initiative, is to start with human relationships, to start with the interpersonal relationships that inspire individual students and build from there. I think at the center of any RPG strategy, yes, we can have bells and whistles and all sorts of new technology, but the center to any RPG strategy is having faculty and staff who are working in academic support or academic roles directly interfacing with students. And that would be a centerpiece to my vision for student success as well. All right. My next vision would be to expand applied inquiry. All right. I want to leverage, again, building on your strengths, I want to leverage your current success with experiential learning at MGA, your QEP program. It's terrific. I had the chance to meet Chris, the, I guess, lead, I don't know if I can call him the architect, but the individual who led that initiative. And I told him how impressed I was. I led the QEP at Kennesaw State, and I know what goes into that, and I'm very impressed with what you've accomplished. So let's build on that. Let's build on high impact practices, yet let's use that as a point of departure for some of the RPG initiatives I've just mentioned. Let's also expand to include, am I getting some feedback there? Sorry. Let's also build on that and expand, you're fixing, thank you, to include new initiatives like the co-op model. I don't know how many of you are familiar with co-ops. Drexel University has maybe the best example of a co-op. It's an articulated experiential learning opportunity, oftentimes professional in nature, that's created from the moment a student starts their first year of study. So it goes hand in hand with first year experience, and it also is intended to prepare students for professional career pathways from a very early stage in their academic careers. So I'd like to explore that and expand again on your high impact practices. I'd also like to flip the model of experiential learning. One of the challenges is we can't send every student out into the field to have an experience. It's too expensive, it's too laborious, scalability problems there. We can also, however, invite members of the community and members of experiential cohort campus, even into the classroom, and thereby expose more students to certain career paths, to certain groups, cultural groups, socioeconomic groups that they otherwise would not be exposed to in their daily lives. Finally, I want to expand creative activity, research, scholarship in ways that are applied and relevant to local communities. Now, I think that one of the challenges that we have as any institution of higher education is a fundamental misunderstanding about the value proposition that we bring to our communities. Many communities simply do not understand that beyond educating students, we are expanding our professional capability to solve real world problems, some of the world's most pressing problems. We're also expanding our expertise in the very pedagogies we use to teach our students. We're constantly innovating. We're addressing local ecological concerns. We're addressing local community engagement issues. And all of your faculty are doing this. They're featured in your magazine. And so I want to incentivize this type of applied inquiry. And you see a variety of examples here, but I think at its core, is ensuring that faculty are recognized for all manner of intellectual inquiry and outreach, and that we use, again, one of our strongest assets, best ambassadors to our community to articulate the relevancy and, in cases where it's appropriate, the applicability of their research, creative activity, and scholarship. My fourth theme for this vision: I would like to develop new models for and for instructional delivery. All right, some of this you may be familiar with. This isn't groundbreaking work, but I know that there is room for a great deal of growth at Middle Georgia State in each of these areas. New models for credentialing. Well, prior learning assessment and competency-based models are already taking a foothold at your campus. I would like to expand those. These are ways that allow us to accomplish more with the limited and perhaps dwindling resources that we're getting from the state to accomplish the same mission. I'm looking for innovative ways for us to achieve our mission with integrity, without compromising quality, but at the same time addressing the needs of our community and the expectations of our state leaders who are appropriating funding for the institution. I want to explore, and you're again already doing this, stackable credentials, badging certificates that allow students to exit if they need to, and then return to the institution to continue their progression towards a four-year degree. Not every student, as we know, is going to complete their entire 4 or 6 year period of study to get a four-year bachelor's degree or a similar credential. And so the Board of Regents, with whom I work, well, specifically the Chancellor's Office, with whom I work a great deal, has been very explicit in acknowledging and promoting the idea of stackable credentials. I would like to make sure that Middle Georgia State gets on that train so that we can dictate for ourselves how to direct that within our curriculum rather than having it dictated to us at some point in the future. I'd like to examine alternatives to the traditional credit hour. Again, none of this is new, but these are the types of innovative approaches that I would bring as provost and I think are necessary given where Middle Georgia State University is in its development and its trajectory, and also some of the challenges that it's facing right now. I would like to cultivate some new models for delivery of instruction. Obviously, online is an important part of this. Traditional online, however, is being enhanced by a variety of new models, including gamification. I know it sounds like a complete gimmick, but it's not. There are very compelling ways to incentivize students to do more peer work so that when the instructor comes in, they can focus on key elements, key knowledge development, and the overall dispositional goals of the course. There are hybrids that are very interesting. A lot of our students increasingly are taking some of their content online and then some of it face-to-face to allow us to balance some of our facilities needs and staffing needs. There are some low residency models that we should be examining. Alternative course schedules, including 6-7 week terms, weekend evening alternatives that maybe haven't been explored yet. So I'd like to look at different ways to deliver the degree programs, the coursework, the bundles of credentials that many of you are already offering, but perhaps are not attracting the right students because of the mode of delivery. Some final thoughts before I open it up for questions. First and foremost, again, I just want to repeat, a lot of this is artificial. These are ideas that I largely had to garner from your website, from some brief conversations with Troy, and some of the annual reports and other materials that were sent to me. I will tell you right now, having gone through almost a full day meetings with a wide range of stakeholders, I would prepare a completely different PowerPoint. And I'm sure, having spent my first week on your campus, if I were selected for this role, I would have a very different set of priorities. Similar areas of focus, but my articulation of what to do and how to do it, I suspect would be quite different. So if I do end up as your provost, then I will need your help to actually craft an appropriate vision. And again, I will start by consulting all of you to develop and articulate that vision. The other sort of point I want to leave you with is, I come with a lot of skill sets that I think are quite directly transferable to Middle Georgia State. And I say that in some ways with a little bit of an epiphany as I've gone over the course of my day. I thought this when I prepared my PowerPoint a few days ago. I think it all the more now that I've spent time with you, because the challenges that you're facing, the issues that you are navigating are the same ones that I was navigating on Monday back at Kennesaw State. The systems that you are using or the systems you're considering to use are either the same or strikingly similar. So a lot of my experience, I think, would be quite facilitative in coming into this role and being able to hit the ground running. But also, I feel like I already know Middle Georgia State University. There's a lot that I have to learn, but there's a lot that is familiar as a fellow University System of Georgia institution. I know the USG as well. I know how to navigate the university system, which is frankly becoming more involved with campus operations, including the academic side. And I've seen that firsthand at Kennesaw State University. I've navigated some very challenging situations. I know the players. I work directly and very closely with executive vice chancellors for academic affairs. Now, I know Tristan Denley very well, but Houston Davis, the immediate past executive vice chancellor for academic affairs, was, I can say at this point, a good friend of mine. He co-taught 2 courses with me. We worked on different projects together. He's now the president at University of Central Arkansas. But I liked Houston, but I also cultivated that relationship because I understood, as did my provost and president at KSU, that the University System of Georgia is a very important part of our institutional calculus. I think that's also an important skill set that I bring. Finally, I know Georgia. I know Georgia, I know its people, I know its culture, I know its politics. And I think your provost needs to be not just there, but sensitive and comprehensive of all of the facets. Education, higher education is done in a particular way here in Georgia. And I like to think that I have developed some very useful skills for Middle Georgia State University in navigating those networks of people and those political landscapes that are so important to institutions like yours. That's it. Before I close and open for questions, I just want to highlight that these are all you. I spent a long time figuring out how to scan images of all of you from your magazine and all 5 campuses. So I hope you appreciate my artwork. Thank you.
Any questions that you have of Dr. Askelson, if you could please state your name and then your time prior to the question you want to ask.
Cameraman, do you mind if I come down? I don't want to ruin your video. Can I come and stand down there? Okay, all right, good. There you go. All right. This is a little more natural. Yes. Hi.
My name is John Garland from the School of Information Technology. Given your current portfolio, I was a little surprised not to see any mention of things international. Can you share what your vision, with all the other caveats, of
Sure.
how international would play in a state university compared to a comprehensive university?
Yeah, great question. It sort of was there, but I was given 20 minutes by Troy, and he told me he was going to hold me to that, so I didn't expand. It was hidden within that experiential learning investment. So international is really, I think, at least on the educational side, an extension of experiential learning. In terms of large, there are a lot of bits and pieces that play in. One that I've talked about with a few of your colleagues is different articulation agreements that could really boost enrollment in some key areas. I think international has a tremendous role to play in Middle Georgia State University's trajectory. I think it's very different from the comprehensive approach, other than maybe scale. But I think on the one side, on the one hand, you're certainly going to want to include international experience as a part of experiential learning. That's always going to be a sexy topic for students. It's going to be a relevant topic for students and graduates. We need to make sure that it's done in a way that's accessible. And that's one of the challenges we have at Kennesaw State. It's so expensive for a lot of these students to participate in international experiences. It's oftentimes a barrier. International collaboration at the institutional level, however, is a multifaceted component of my approach. So again, whether it's dual degrees or institutional partnerships to facilitate certain types of research or excellence in certain disciplinary areas, those are issues that I have a great deal of experience and expertise in, and I certainly would bring that to your role of provost. So thank you for helping me highlight that. You're gonna have to forgive me. I'm getting to the point in the day here where I'm not quite as articulate as I was in the morning, but I appreciate your patience nonetheless. Please. Very good. Hello.
I was just curious about, you're a very good speaker.
Thank you.
Yeah, it was great listening to you.
Thank you.
I think it was a couple slides ago when you were talking about the models.
Yes.
It sounded like in your language you talked a lot about the undergraduate, but as you, in your research, I'm sure you're aware that we have several graduate programs.
Yes.
That we're moving forward. So I was wondering if those were also some things that you're focusing on for those programs.
For these different delivery models, is this like absolutely, and thank you for mentioning that. Again, Troy has clipped my wings in terms of the details. I'm going to blame it all on Troy. The level of detail that I can go through these slides, but absolutely, I have a great deal of experience actually with developing new graduate programs, particularly interdisciplinary graduate programs. I've developed 2 myself, but I've had hand in developing about a dozen across 2 institutions. And yes, in fact, I would say these are more applicable, particularly the modes of delivery, the diverse modes of delivery for graduate coursework. And the population, particularly working population, is more intuitively attracted to things like low residency and hybrid models and other sort of differential course schedules than our traditional aged undergraduate. So I appreciate you pointing that out, and I think that would be an important part of, again, strategy that I'd like to explore with you and see what the right fit may be. Yes. Yeah, please.
4 months in, so brand new. That's a learning curve, but I'm learning a lot. And I agree with my colleagues. I'm very engaged in presentation.
Thank you.
So my question is, you mentioned the known Georgia.
Yes.
Recognizing the changing evolution of this institution now that it's university.
Yep.
We also talk about location, and I'm so glad that you mentioned the understanding of a role component.
Mm-hmm.
We do see that here. But you mentioned about student success and helping students recognize the importance of education.
Yes.
Oftentimes you see more of a role setting, and particularly in the States. How would you sort of make that connection to help students recognize the value? Because often the challenges we have in this location is a little different than maybe Kennesaw State University or some of the more well-known universities in the system, since
Mm-hmm.
they're brand new universities. Because it takes time to get the goal is to get there.
Yeah.
But it's a learning curve for faculty, administration, and students.
Yeah.
And the rigor. So I guess there's a whole bunch in there.
No, I see what you're saying. Absolutely, it's very clear to me, and I've heard this this series of emphases across the board from a variety of faculty, staff, and leaders over the course of my day. The answer is multifaceted, and I'll start with a few of the big pieces. From what I can gather at this stage, Middle Georgia State University suffers from a lack of brand awareness. People literally know about the institution, is what I've heard from a number of your colleagues. But there's also a challenge in terms of the internal identity of the institution. So it's not just pushing out that identity. There's really confusion and ambiguity about who you are as a consolidated institution. I understand that because I went through consolidation at Kennesaw State. We consolidated Nick State 3 years ago, actually a little less, 2.5 years ago officially. And it creates a lot of complexity. It creates a lot of multiple identities. And unless you have strong leadership articulating from the top a shared vision, a shared identity, and unless there's an inclusive process for everyone to feel like they're a part of that, I think you're going to continue to struggle with that ability to then outwardly project this is who we are and this is why you should come to us. So there are a lot of other pieces to that. You already alluded to some of them, but I think the fundamental challenge is you need some leadership in academic affairs, I think specifically, to bring folks together, to have the critical conversations about not just institutional strategy, but institutional vision, which is, I think, why I was invited to talk about vision instead of strategy. And I think that needs to be a very frank and expansive conversation among all stakeholders so that everybody feels like they've had a chance to put in their 2 cents and feel bought into the summative process then that results in, I don't know, a new vision statement, or at least some new document that helps articulate for people across the institution who we are and what we do and where our areas of emphasis are. The obvious here, and again, I'm not bringing any tremendous wisdom to you this afternoon. I'm just trying to bring together some kernels of insight. The obvious is we have to be strategic about what we do, because we can't do everything for everyone with limited resources. And so is how do we pare down that strategy? And again, I think there needs to be a deliberative process that identifies what the institution's priorities are. I've given you my priorities while trying to understand who you are as an institution. The next step, whether it's me or some other candidate for your provostship, I think should be a very systematic process of, and I do this all the time, and I'm in my 3rd institutional strategic plan right now over the last roughly 6 or 7 years. And that process is absolutely critical to moving forward with any sort of implementation. What I hear right now is a lot of people are trying to plug holes with small initiatives without any sensation from which they're starting. And that, I think, was also alluded to in your question. So I think, again, the answer here is a systematic approach to strategic planning that is clear, that is inclusive, that prioritizes who the institution is and how it's going to communicate that identity to the community. Excuse me, I'm going to just grab a swift from my bottle. Yes, and I think there was there a hand up here that I saw first, and I'll come back to you, sir. Yes. Yep. Yes. In your current role and if you're selected for this profession, what is your view about getting out beyond just the deans and the chairs to get down to the faculty to again engage them and make them feel that they matter? Yeah, question. I mean, the answer is that is my vision, is to get down to the faculty. Now, one of the reasons, excuse me, reasons that I'm attracted to this position is it is a smaller institution than where I am. I do know that. I know that Kennesaw State, for those of you who maybe don't know, is 36,000 students. It's too big for me. And by the way, we went from 24,000 when I joined in 2013 to 36,000 now, and a lot of that is consolidated, but I digress. The point is, one of my personal affirmations for the work that I do, I consider myself a faculty member first. And one of the reasons I enjoy administration is having a greater impact than I could in just a classroom. And if I don't get the chance to speak directly to people who are benefiting from that fairly mind-numbing bureaucratic work at times, I mean, let's be honest, not exactly, thrilling work to craft policy and lead committees. One of the benefits is being able to speak directly to stakeholders, faculty, some staff, students certainly, to hear directly from them. That helps inform my work, but it also gives me a sense that I'm making a difference. Now, that said, I also think you need to have the right structures in place to facilitate decision-making at the appropriate levels. I'm getting the sense that there's need for greater structure at the programmatic, departmental, and collegiate level. I asked a question in one of my meetings to the effect of, do you have college councils, departmental councils where faculty sort of communication is facilitated? And the answer was no. I think structures like that could be quite helpful. I think a variety of clarifications of institutional policy for decision-making and consistency and coherence across all of the various units, the colleges, but also the campuses, would go a long way towards addressing those particular issues and addressing the sort of sentiment that I think you're speaking to. You're welcome. Yes, I'm sorry, you had a question.
But Jonathan kind of stole my question. I'm sure Manisha probably the school of education. And as someone who kind of made reference to going through consolidation,
Yes.
some of these multi-campuses, kind of so trends been taking you through our helicopter through all our multi-campuses. And as a provost, I'm just really interested to see what kind of academic culture you'll be able to bring to an institution like us with multiple campuses.
Yeah.
So when I go to Cochrane, even my home is Macon,
Yeah.
I don't feel like a fish out of water.
Yeah, well said, well said. I too, it's the trauma of consolidation. So that's my identification with your challenge here. I can speak to that very specifically in one way, but I'll make a broader statement following my specific example. And this, I wish I could claim it as my idea, but this is really my former president's mandate, which I thought was quite brilliant. Immediately after we started the consolidation process, the president required all senior administrators to spend at least 2 days a week on the other campus, the new campus to Kennesaw. This was the Marietta campus. I would absolutely commit to spending physical time at campuses. I think that would be the first instantiation of what you're talking about, of having consistent presence and culture. Now, I'm one man. I'm not going to lie to you and suggest that I have a magic bullet or a panacea to fix culture. You're the ones, frankly, responsible for fixing the culture. I'm the one who's responsible for guiding you along that process. My job as your provost would be to provide a roadmap and a process, and frankly, the accountability to ensure that we can create a healthy academic culture that is consistent across all of those campuses, that is consistent across all of the colleges. It's not going to be easy. It's not going to be short. And Kennesaw State University has not done anything particularly magical in that arena. But what I will tell you is I understand the challenge, and I have some insightful approaches and frankly the gumption to make sure that we actively addressing that issue, making sure that we have the proper structures to address that issue. And then frankly, I need everybody here to, I mean, culture change does not happen from the top. It's largely a bottom-up process by structure and leadership. And that's what I can commit to giving you. And I'll give it 130%. But I will not be able to change the culture. That really will be all of you joining in hand with me to prosecute that vision, whatever vision we decide to pursue. And so there are a lot of open questions here. I realize this is an exercise. You want to see me talking. You want to see, if I can, answer certain questions. I get it. I would want the same thing. But this is a bit of a charade in terms of the actual content of my presentation. I think I put up a nice charade, though. It's pretty. But ultimately, I don't know the answers to most of your specific questions, but what I hope you're taking away from my responses and my presentation is the general approach with which I would try to address some of these issues. Yes?
Could you discuss the relationship between the academic affairs, the fiscal affairs, and how you understand this?
Those are loaded questions. Good. I mean, very, very appropriate, and I'm glad you're asking them. If I'm interpreting your question correctly, I would say that, let me say this. I think the academic mission of the university should subordinate every other function. So academics is the core, the heart, the soul of the university. Without academics, you're not a university. Well, without a budget, you're not a university either. But we could teach for free. We could still technically be an educational institution. I ascribe to, and this was a question that I posed early on in the search process, is the provost at Middle Georgia State the first among equals when it comes to the other vice presidents? And that's not because I want to sit higher in my pneumatic seat than the other vice presidents. I just want to know where the priorities are. And frankly, you know, your president is an impressive academic. He has academic bona fides that, to me, are a very important sign of prioritization. What I received in that question was, yes, the provost is the first among equals in terms of emphasizing the academic mission. So academic affairs vis-a-vis fiscal affairs, we're partners. We're absolute partners. But fiscal affairs is not going to dictate for academic affairs, because that would be disastrous. Nobody comes to Middle Georgia State University got great fiscal discipline. Not that that isn't important. I hope the fiscal affairs person isn't misunderstanding me. Yeah. They're going to watch this video and go, no, it's a fat no. Oh, sorry. Well, you've been smiling the whole time, so I can already tell you're a really nice person. So again, endeavor. I just was speaking to the vice president for student affairs, and she asked me a similar question. You know, how do you see academic affairs vis-a-vis student affairs? I see student affairs as a vital partner. If we're not working together, we're sunk. If there aren't synergies, if we're not more than the sum of our parts, we are not going to succeed. And so I think that's the approach to that division. I'm so tired at this point in the day, I've forgotten the second half of your question. Calculated risk, thank you. Troy made me 5:30 in the morning. I just want to point this out. Drove to, yeah. You told me I could beat up on you in the presentation. Calculated risk. Calculated risk is a necessity to advancement. You can't advance without taking risk. Calculated risk is something that I engage in every single day. I think we need to be cautious, and we particularly need to be sensitive to the of risks that we take. And I say this coming from an institution that, quite frankly, has gotten its hand slapped. A lot of risks in a lot of entrepreneurial areas, and got a little far afield, and is now in a period of some retrenchment as we're. So my answer to that is I'm an intellectual entrepreneur, at least I pretend to be. I play one on TV. I really think it's important to invest in order to create. You can't create anything new without investment, and that doesn't just mean financial investment. It means human capital. It means energy and focus as well. But we need to be mindful of how those investments are perceived. And actually, I'm going to go back to your question, and I'll tell you, and I didn't realize it until this very moment, but one of the reasons I think I didn't highlight international is because international is erroneously perceived as this, you know, extra gravy sauce on top. Unnecessary, glamorous, sexy, but sort of a indulgence and a luxury. It's not. I'm here to tell you, it's hard work to do any of the international work well. It is hard work, and we fly economy class, ladies and gentlemen. Have you seen how small those spaces are? I think the perception of that investment just needs to be carefully considered in the risk calculus. Yes.
You spoke earlier about culture, and I'll share that I'm fairly new to higher education. I've only been at one institution prior to this. But one of the things that makes this a great place to come to work every day is that what we do share among the administration, the faculty, and the staff is that we draw our inspiration from our students, many of whom are coming here at great sacrifice, even though we're very affordable.
No.
Many of whom are first generation, to whom I personally relate personally. But I think if there is a culture that exists here, it is one of commitment to those students. And so I think, as you know, Middle Georgia State is one of only 4 institutions that has been asked to do 2 very difficult things. To go in the way that you're talking about with calculated risk, but to remain a point of access for people that may not otherwise have an opportunity to better themselves through higher education. And
Sure.
So my question to you is, what experience do you have working with that population, with a first generation college student, resource constrained environment, and how would you approach that?
Yeah. Well, first of all, very eloquent statement of the source of vision for Middle Georgia State. I really appreciate that. And I appreciate the question as well. I think any institution of higher education, needs to center their mission and ethos on the shoulders of the students that they serve. I mean, they really need to build upon student and where students are in that process. If we're serving as a relative access institution, I've heard sort of different versions of that, because I know there's an access mission, but we also want to maintain standards and really articulate standards with more specificity. I have a great deal of experience. Let me start. One of the reasons I left, I get this question all the time, one of the reasons I left the University of Notre Dame, which is sort of a well-resourced institution, is because, and I loved it. And if you look at my CV, I was being promoted there. I was doing very well. Well, to be honest with you, one of the reasons was it's in South Bend, Indiana, but that's a different story. The other reason was I had a hard time identifying with the student body. I'm a product of public higher education, access and otherwise. All three of my degrees are from state universities. And I wanted to go back and feel like I was contributing to the mission of state higher education, because again, I think it's one of the most noble missions within society. It's really a pathway to personal self-determination, economic success, and intellectual actualization, which is something that I want to be a part of. But to your core question about the experience that I have with it, Kennesaw State has an enormous first-generation student body. I think our percentage at this point is a little under 20%, but we're 36,000 students. And a lot of our resources in the student success arena are focused on first-gen students, but they're also focused on students who may not be first generation, but come with other challenges that are predictive of failure or low retention rates, I guess is the best way to put it. So in terms of my vision or my approach as provost in addressing first generation students, in continuing to meet the needs of that constituency here in Middle Georgia, and I understand that. I understood that a priori before I submitted my application. That's professional satisfaction to me. I know the tools, I know the best practices, and I've been surprised and pleased to see how much you've already been doing in this area. I had no idea that Middle Georgia State had already partnered in the first cohort with the Gardner Institute. And you've been doing a lot of work that Kennesaw State actually has been doing, addressing sustainable models, what I like to call human models of student success, where you're dealing with individual profiles rather than larger demographic databases and electronic tools. So my approach to that demographic and that constituency would be to leverage the experience and expertise that I have working with those populations much larger level, at a macro level at Kennesaw State, and bring more customized solutions to Middle Georgia State with its smaller, more intimate environments and its distributed campuses. Yes. Hi.
You hit on a piece that's very interesting and rich to me.
Sure.
We have a large portion of mine, and I came here to teach, and that was one of the things we brought out to the teaching school, the still our teaching school.
Yes.
We have a current model of pushing more research
Mm-hmm.
in that area, which is taking foundation. Important things to me. We put a note in there, and I know the board points about research, methodology, styles.
Yes.
How open are you in this category to work with everybody the same? Courses you have your experience with learning. I just used two of mine, retro students have this research aspect to it. The capstone of Dr. Durant, I think that's
Mhm.
so work with nonprofit groups in the area to create IT solutions,
Oh, cool.
e-commerce projects and all that. Does that fit a vision for you, expanding? Is that something, or is it?
Absolutely.
What is your philosophy?
My philosophy, and I have some instantiation of that philosophy personally, which I'll share in just a moment. But my philosophy is that faculty need to be pursuing intellectual pursuits within the context of their teaching duty. And if that takes them farther afield, great. But if all you're doing is intellectualizing your pedagogy or your curriculum, and it sounds like that's sort of what you were doing. You did a course redesign, you included some external outreach and some applied action research, it sounds like to me, with local nonprofits. That's creative activity by most definitions. I mean, if you want to use the Boyer model, which I know is something that is common currency here, I don't know if it's consistent across all of your colleges, which speaks to, again, the point about clarity in procedure, in policy, and expectation. But my approach to scholarship, research, creative activity is, as long as you are developing professionally, this to me is professional development as much as it is active research or creative activity. Certainly your deans have a part in that conversation. I'm not going to dictate to your department chairs or deans what it is what is sufficiently appropriate for that type of activity within your discipline. But what I will strongly encourage your deans and your department chairs to do is to include a broader array of research and inquiry that includes, I think, what you just described. So here's my sort of proof in the pudding example. I was in the English department, my tenure home was in the English department, and I specifically moved my tenure home symbolically, largely, to University College, which is a very interdisciplinary college. And I did that because I was doing work that was very applied, and I wanted to partner with faculty. In fact, I was involved to partner with a number of faculty to develop some new curricular models, to develop some new assessment models, and ultimately we're working on a graduate program, master's degree, that's interdisciplinary in nature. So I personally am very attracted to the idea of interdisciplinary and alternative forms of creative activity. And I think, you know, again, if you're looking for a schema, the Boyer model is probably the best articulation of those different types of research. So it's not just creating new knowledge and publishing in a AAA journal. I think deans and department chairs should be able to consider a wider array of creative activities and intellectual inquiry, as long as it's meeting the standards within their disciplines. And again, I'm not a disciplinary expert, so I would not personally be involved in those, but I would certainly encourage that broad approach as provost. Does that answer your question? Okay. Yes. Sorry. Yeah.
I have a question about how to manage the FYE program.
Yes. Yes.
All of them, or are there exceptions?
There are exceptions. It's not a unified first-year experience. There are a variety of tracks that students are placed into. We do have some what are supposed to be standardized first-year course, first-year seminar that is really quite diverse. And again, students are increasingly tracked into specific cohorts. Probably the best example of our approach to first-year experience is learning communities. So we put certain groups together, taking all of their classes together, and there are support mechanisms for those groups because they tend to be at-risk groups, available to them optionally. We don't force it upon them, of course. Some of the other initiatives, though, are specifically designed to track student progress in their first year. So it's, I think probably one of the more innovative approaches is identifying the D2L platform to identify certain patterns in student performance, because we've regularized the way that our faculty interact with D2L for grades and certain types of reporting. And then we automatically get academic red flags that then get reviewed by, oh, this student looks like they could benefit from this resource, or this student probably needs a phone call or outreach from their academic advisor to see if they need some additional support. So again, the first year experience is an umbrella under which about a dozen different initiatives and programs live. But it's an award-winning and nationally recognized first-year program. I don't know what the ranking was for the most immediate past year, but I think we're ranked 8th, or we're a top 10 in the country first-year pro 3 years. So it's a really good program, and it's run by our university college. Again, I moved to that discipline because of some of the work that I was doing in student success. And I would certainly try to bring whatever scalable examples of initiatives from Kennesaw State into Middle Georgia State that I could. I think there's probably a lot that we could scale. Thank you. Oh, yes. Hi.
To piggyback off of that, you mentioned orientation. In
Yes.
The same slide as FYE.
Yeah.
I'm assuming you mean new student orientation.
No, also transition orientation. So I'm talking about new students and transfer students. Yeah, but you were thinking maybe, yeah, new student orientation is the primary focus there. So our new student orientation is not just orientation, it's an opportunity for us to identify student deficits, self-reported, so that we can already track them, and that's where we do some of our pathways and tracking, so that we can track them into certain cohorts like the learning model, or excuse me, the learning communities approach, where they're all taking the same classes with a cohort of other students, and then they get dedicated opportunities to plug into additional resources. Is that okay? Okay. And then the other thing there that is maybe a little more innovative is we've started doing orientation for transfer students, because transfer students are oftentimes left out sort of in the lurch. And increasingly, they're an important part of our FTEs and our IPEDS data if we can capture them correctly. And that means they're reported into the RFG rates, excuse me, RPG rates. I know I'm getting tired if I can't even say that acronym. But transition orientation programs are just as important, we're finding, for those transfer students as they are for first-year students.
I'd like to thank each of you for coming to Dr. Askel's. And with that, that's it.
Thank you.